Hello and welcome to the MBV podcast. I'm Jeremy Gardner from MindBodyVortex.com, and today we're back in Montreal with Katie McIntyre from MindBody, and we're talking about breathing, more specifically, the importance of proper breathing. The breath is a very mysterious thing that we're hardly aware of, and yet each breath we take supports everything we do and everything we experience. If you're like most people, including myself, you've likely developed kind of an unconscious, sometimes shallow and unhealthy way of breathing without even being aware of it. We have so many other things to focus on though, right? And breathing is something that just happens. So why does it require our attention? Well, for centuries, people have sought after self-therapy and meditative relaxation through breathing techniques. Breathwork is a general term used to describe any type of therapy that utilizes breathing exercises to improve mental, physical, and spiritual health. Many forms of breathwork therapy exist today, each with their own unique methodology of using breath for specific therapeutic purposes. Stemming from Eastern practices like yoga and Tai Chi, along with Western psychotherapy techniques, in order to bring about mindfulness, breathwork can include elements of autosuggestion, talk therapy, breathing, and even art, music, and bodywork to integrate into the experience. I had the opportunity to do a couple breathwork sessions with Katie, and this was a very deep and refreshing experience, I must admit, and actually a lot more intense than I had expected. If you want to experience deeper states of calm, well-being, and more positive energy, the key, I have learned, is to develop good breathing habits. And that is exactly what we will be talking about today with Katie McIntyre from MindBody Montreal. What is breath work compared to kind of a lot of the other breathing exercises that we might be familiar with?
Breath work that I teach is founded from a man named Dennis Ouellette. It's an integral breathwork approach. He also works alongside with Michael White, who runs breathing.com. And Michael looks at the way that the breath is naturally and how to optimize it with its rhythms and with the functionality of it. And Dennis has brought together the healing aspect of it. He has been very versatile in all forms of breathing exercises for healing, and different ways of using the breath to improve a sense of well-being and allow the body to be free from stress and traumas and any form of limitation that you might feel in your life. This is where Dennis has combined the concept of breathing properly with using the breath to then heal. Mm-hmm. And so when you do a breathwork session with MindBody, I've taken also some other components that I've known and learned along the way. I teach the way that I teach to open up the body during the session is a lot of the exercises come from eccentrics, and it helps a person get into being able to feel their body, which is what you're speaking about, where you might have not known that there were limitations in certain aspects of your breath, because the breath really functions all through here. And often if our traps are tight or our jaw is tight or we slept wrong and our mid-back is tight or our low back, those are actually all indicators of unbalanced dysfunctional breathing. And we tend to think that it's just the back or it's just the jaw, but we really have to look at it as that my breath isn't reaching its max potential, whether the signal is coming from pain or restriction, or vice versa. The stress that we experience in life has shut down our breathing, which then causes the restriction. Mm-hmm. And so I like to teach that before we do any form of healing with the breath, so that people really understand the benefits of working with their breath on a regular basis, based on whatever it is you're experiencing in your life. You know, there are times we hold our breath. We're focusing at the computer. We're shy. We restrict ourselves from saying something. And that's all creating an imbalanced mechanism in the way that you breathe. Yeah. And so, as I'm speaking now, even, you can tell the breath will change. So we have to get back to understanding, well, what is a natural breath when I'm not doing all of these things that are making my breath shorter and smaller and affecting me physically, mentally, and emotionally. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a physical thing, and that's what surprised me about this, because in meditation you're paying attention to your breath, and that's kind of calming the mind and bringing it back to the moment, which is very effective as well. But what surprised me about going deeper into the quality of the breath was the physical sensations I was feeling, and it's a lot more physical. So when you talk about restrictions, we're also referring to the very subtle things, like just maybe even large amounts of stress will obviously cause us to breathe differently, but even just the subtle anxieties that we come across on our daily basis which is why most of us aren't breathing as properly as we should be. So can you talk just little bit about that? What's holding us back from breathing properly to begin with?
A lot of time is posture. So sitting all day at a computer is the worst that you can do, for your breathing. It smushes it. I mean, even when you meditate, it's not a good position to be in when you're breathing because of the angle in the hips, So we are often limiting ourselves within our posture, as well as if we're doing breathing exercises, to be in a position that is free, that is really relaxed, so that the breath can find its range. Yeah. If it's in a position, you're in your car, you're thinking you're working on your breath, or you're in yoga class and you're thinking you're working on your breath, all of those things have value, and it's great to be aware of your breath because it's so important. But when it comes to reaching the potential that your diaphragm can move, so that when you're not thinking about it, it's functioning properly, that takes time to lay down, relax, and find the potential within it. Find out within your body, like your physical body, where is it restricted based on whatever it is you were doing that day. Okay. And so the posture of driving, being at the computer, that's a major factor. Even sleep posture. Sleeping, lying there for 8 hours, and if you're not in a correct position that supports your body to breathe for that period of time, then your body is shutting down in its capacity to support you in the breath, because it's restricted and limited while you're sleeping. Most people sleep on their sides, but it would be more natural to open up the chest and breathe. Yeah. So that the diaphragm can move, making sure you're all supported. It's not always comfortable for people. So not saying that you have to completely change the way you sleep, but become aware of, if I'm not doing that for that period of time, then I need to find an alternative within my life where I do support my breath to move freely.
So incorporating more mindfulness in our body, instead of just sitting down and or just however we feel comfortable, just paying a little bit more attention to adding a little bit more grace to the normal things that we do on a daily basis. Those are some of the physical restrictions that hold us back. What are some mental restrictions that would obstruct the way that we breathe?
Well, it could be, it all comes down a lot mentally to perception. So what's going on in your life that bothers you, triggers you, makes you feel uncomfortable, all of those things affect the way that your body responds to what it is you see is happening. So if your feelings are hurt, you're not communicating, you're going through a rough time, you can't shut down the noise in your head, there's mental struggle happening inside, that's going to come out in the way that the body feels in itself. When you're tense and you stop and you hold it in, and you might not even be aware of how much you're doing it. Mm-hmm. If you're just even thinking about something very intently, your breath can slow down to almost nothing. Right?
Why is that?
Just because of the focus that's needed, or the awareness is directed at something else. So your body does want to support you in what you're doing. It just depends on if you're also supporting it in what it wants to do. And so
it's kind of like, it's almost like waiting to, is it the fight or flight response? It's waiting to kind of see what needs to happen.
Yeah, exactly. If a perception in your mind is of danger or stress, overwhelmed, not feeling comfortable, then yes, it's more in a fight or flight. Even those people that exercise and do marathons and triathlons, and they understand the importance of their breath, but the only time they're working on their breath is when they're in a fight or flight state, which is that aggressive exercise. So yes, staying in fight or flight, whether it's in your mind or in your body, is going to keep that rapid aggressive or even clenching and stuck, it doesn't have, that fight or flight action is happening in through your breath. So when you come back into rest, digest, and heal in the autoimmune system, then that's where the real movement of the diaphragm can have its rhythm and have its flow. But if you're always in fight or flight,
You're always just thinking, and
it's always restricted, so that you can't find that balance, and your lungs can't open up more than your ribs can, so your rib cage has to actually have the space in it to allow the lungs and the diaphragm to suck in the oxygen into them. But if you're in fight or flight and you're always working out, people that have six-pack abs, most likely they have dysfunctional breathing, because there's no space for the diaphragm to move down, no space for the air to come in. You can be strong in your core and still have space to breathe.
Yeah.
And sometimes fight or flight personalities, or people that are in it without them even knowing it, that's just normal for them. Tightness is normal. It's not something they're thinking that they're actually slowly suffocating.
Yeah.
They don't associate that with their breathing. And this is what I tend to promote in my breathwork sessions, is for people to realize that whatever it is, that activity that you're doing, think about how can you create more flow, more expansion in your body, more relaxation in the areas that promote fight or flight, which is the upper chest. Rest, digest, and heal is in the basin. It is in what I call the pear area.
Yeah.
Fight or flight is up here. So typically a natural breath wants to be 70% in the lower and then 30% into the chest. Often when people are told, take a deep breath in when you're stressed, or just breathe, then they go,
yeah,
and that's actually triggering more fight or flight.
no kidding.
Because when you want to take a deep breath, you actually want to feel the exhale be more longer and more relaxed. That's what's going to allow you to take a natural, calming, deep breath.
What you say is more in the deep diaphragm of the rest and digest, right? The deeper breath is how we access that rest and recuperation phase. Is that something that has to be consciously triggered? Because the flight or flight response is something that is kind of almost like automatic, right? And it's a state of mind that a lot of us are always living in, just kind of always on the edge of analyzing and contemplating what's next. And breathing is just something that's kind of automatic that we take for granted. Which is probably a reason why we don't focus on it as being something important, because it's just something that we have. We're born and we're just breathing all the time, right? So to go deeper into the breath and to take control of that, does that have to happen consciously? Or is that something that we can build so that our natural breathing is a healthier version of the way that we normally breathe?
Your breathing helps you have a balance in your autoimmune system. So that is going into fight or flight and going into rest, digest, and heal. And so if people find that they are more in fight or flight and can't get themselves into rest, digest, and heal, then that would be a signal that your breathing mechanism is off. Okay. And so often there is a speed bump in this section of the body that allows us not to access the lower half. If we are in anxiety and fight or flight, we're typically in breathing from the chest. And then if we are more depressed and tired and in rest, digest, and heal more often, then you're missing out on the fight or flight phase of balance. So you want to access more opening up the speed bump, because you probably are typically breathing mostly from here. So it's a nice junction between it creates the homeostasis in your body to be able to access both of those aspects of the autoimmune system, which are super important for your balance in your body. And if you find that, you get the thoughts, I need to take yoga more, I need to meditate more, I need to breathe more, that's really the intelligence of your body coming out through your thoughts, saying, like, I'm way too much over here.
Yeah.
I need to go back here. And that's when you can come and join in a breathwork session, because it'll help you get right back into homeostasis through working on it. Not only physically opening up like we do at the beginning of the session, but then when we fly it and we let the body let go of the overrun patterns or thoughts or the debris, the free radicals that have just been accumulating because you've been off balance, then by letting that go, the body is now back in its state of balance. And most people finish the breathwork session feeling calm, at peace.
Yeah.
Their actual physical look changes. They're more relaxed. They see clearer. They have more clear thoughts.
Yeah, it was weird. That's what threw me off too. It's I didn't have those subtle anxieties that we typically just, I didn't realize how much they were always there. Like nothing, not that I was living in stress, but just always an underlying tension of something, right? And it just wasn't there. It just completely disappeared. And it was almost kind of frustrating a little bit, because as when we were finishing the session, you said it might take a couple days to kind of let your body find the homeostasis. And for me, it definitely took a few days to get used to just being a little bit more open and a little bit more clear, and not have those anxious thoughts. But in a weird way, I felt like I was almost relying on those anxious thoughts, like when our mind's wandering, it keeps us kind of occupied, right? And there was just nothing there for me to grab onto. So it left me room to move, room to think about other things. And that took some getting used to, which is a fascinating aspect of that. Mm-hmm. And so the fight or flight response and the relaxation response kind of both serve a purpose, right? And they're both automatic responses. Would you say that a lot of the people that you work with tend to be more excessive in the anxious and stressed part?
Yes, because most people that I'm coming to work with are looking for solutions to feel better.
Yeah.
And so typically, yes, they have identified for themselves that they need to improve feeling more calm or feeling more centered or secure within themselves. So they see the value of the breath in some way, shape, or form that it has spoken to them, and that says, maybe if I breathe more, or if I learned how to breathe, then that would help me, feel better. And with the program that I do with Mind Body, it's an essential aspect to that, because we reprogram beliefs held in your subconscious, but then we also reprogram your breathing to help integrate all that, so that we then connect the fact that you understand and you use proper breathing from that day on, or as a practice, so that you maintain that path of security, of feeling good within yourself, of having a sense of well-being, of being able to have great posture that allows you to give you confidence, that allows you to speak clear, that allows you to be vital, be young, have that energy that is like a great will for life, Mm-hmm. And if you're not working on your breathing, then lots of times, you're pretty much slowly suffocating yourself. Mm-hmm. Every disease can be related back to poor breathing.
Really?
Yeah. Every disease.
Not
so
enough.
It's the leading cause of death is poor breathing, because you look at heart conditions, you look at cancer, they're all breathing related. Cancer can't survive in an oxygenated state. Yeah. So if you're not breathing properly, then you're promoting an anaerobic state, a state that does not have oxygen. So that helps cancer spread.
Yeah.
Right? And so anything, deterioration in the brain from strokes, aspects of, anything that can create a problem typically is coming from the mechanism that is keeping you alive, the number one thing.
Exactly.
You can go 40 days without eating, you can go 7 days without water, but body can't last or survive 1 minute without oxygen.
Yet it's something it's something we neglect. So not that we neglect it, but we take it for granted, right?
Right. Yeah.
We're born with it.
We think it's just supposed to be working for us.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, we work for ourselves. If we thought it just worked for us, I changed the perception of the breath. It is you at all times. It's your best friend. It's something you go to. If we're not thinking like that it's something that we need to go to, then when it's having a problem, you're perceiving something uncomfortable, then it's just going to keep having the problem until you recognize it and you work on it, So it's a great indicator to tell you, oh, I need some help because I'm not comfortable. And sometimes that comes from sleeping wrong or having a big week, carrying things, something gets off. And then it can lead to that feeling of anxiety or fatigue, you're more tired because from those ways that you moved or those things that happened, then your breath is off.
It's getting more closed and a little bit more restricted. And
yeah, and we don't think that it ever has anything to do with the breath.
No.
We think, oh, I might have been eating crappy food. That might be true. Maybe you're not eating oxygenated food. Very true. But at the same time, if you weren't eating oxygenated food and you were still oxygenated, your body would still be able to metabolize it and get it out. It's obviously better to eat food that is highly oxygenated and alkaline. But even if you're not doing that, if you're breathing well, your diaphragm is moving, it's going to be able to do its job and work for you. So we think, oh, I didn't exercise. Oh, I'm so tired. Or, oh, I got sick. It's a virus. Or, oh, I threw my back out. Well, we don't think, could it have been because I was already breathing poorly?
Yeah, it's not. We never think about that. It's never. Not only is it not our first indication, it's not even a consideration, our breath.
Right.
But if anybody that has come across like meditation where with some type of breathing involved would always be amazed at how much of a difference it makes just in the way you feel after. But what's interesting with breath work, going a little bit deeper into the physical aspect of it, which I was surprised as well, as I felt really calm after, but I also felt aware and like a little, it was almost primal. Like there was almost a primal feeling to it where you were ready. The fight or flight response felt healthier. It was ready to go, it was ready you just felt more adaptable to real life situations. And that was not just after finishing a 30-minute meditation where you're just calm and nothing can bother you, which is great as well. But there was a lot more going on physically, and that was exciting. But it's something that needs to be taken care of. So what is an example? What is a proper breath?
Proper breath is breathing 70% into the pear, so your breath would then move into the back and the sides as well. And then it comes up like a wave into your chest, where if you can imagine like a cone, it would fill up through here, and your shoulders will lift just slightly. You won't feel any tension in them. They'll just move gently because your ribs will have to move a bit in your chest. And then an exhale is nice and natural, and it deflates everything. Often if you want a better inhale, then you improve your exhale. So I've been talking now with you for quite some time, and I've been sitting in this position, which is a little bit lower than I would sit if I were going to work on my breathing. But if I were to take even 2 breaths or 3 breaths right now, showing how if working on the exhale improves the inhale and how to access that within 3 breaths, I can do that. So what you would do is just breathe into the belly. So when you can fill up this area completely, you can see by my second breath, because I exhaled efficiently in the first one, that it was so much easier to fill up fully. Now, some people that can't fill here, when they breathe in, they go up and they feel like they can get more air, but they're not able to. And so when I exhale completely and relax after, it then takes just a natural way for the body to say, oh yes, let's expand again. So even doing like 8 breaths in that way opens up your breath, allows it to grasp more air, allows it to freely rebound. Mm-hmm. and it gives the body that sense of fulfillment and nourishment, because that we're working on that breath. So once we trigger and say, this is how I want to breathe, it can access it better, and it will do it when I'm not thinking about it. So if you want a natural breath, you got to work to get to the natural breath, which is filling up the belly, letting it flow through up into the chest, and then letting it out.
Yeah. And then what I noticed as well is I had a lot of restrictions in getting my breath into the belly. I wasn't breathing as deep as the 70%. That was a very interesting way to look at it. I didn't know that. What was it? 70% of the breath is from the diaphragm, right?
Well, it's in the lower portion we call the pear, because it's not just in the belly. There's actually 40% about of the belly, but then the rest is the side and the back. Mm-hmm. So that has to move when you're breathing. The air has to feel like it's going in there. and then it moves through you, not skips this speed bump zone, and then fills up the chest and exhales.
And exhales, yeah. And then so just I was able to, the first session that we did, I was able to kind of get through that speed bump, and I noticed it being able a little bit more expanded, and that carried on to, I was able to become way more aware of that just in my everyday breathing, and now it's something that happens naturally. So you recommend doing at least some type of breath work at least 2 or 3 times per year, right?
In terms of doing a breathwork session, the ones that I teach are 3 hours long. Dennis teaches 6-hour-long workshops where he does a full extensive way of working with the breath. But breath work in the form that we do, that is that specific diaphragm breathing, you can do that any day. It's just different intent. So how you're using your breath is important to understand. Like, you can do breathing exercises in your nose and to work your fight or flight system, in your autoimmune system. But if you're typically in there all the time and you don't feel balanced, then you wouldn't do those types of exercises. So if you're looking to let go and heal and revitalize yourself, then I would do a breathwork session like with mind body. But there's also conscious breathing, breathing wave, holotropic, rebirthing. There's all sorts of forms of ways to work with your breath. And it's just important to understand your intention of what you want to get out of it to work with your breath, as well as knowing what it's going to give you in working in that way, to see if that is what you need and what you want for yourself. But overall, I promote people to work on their breath every day.
All the time, yeah.
All the time.
But that's
as much as you can.
Yeah, but those listening
number
might not understand. Like, that's something I try to do. I'm always trying to pay attention to my breath, at least, because I know how much of a difference it makes. But doing the actual breathwork session is just more of a, I don't know, is it like, it's almost like a tune-up for your car, right? It's setting,
exactly.
It's like really, it's like a check stop, and it's something it's just a reset. And like, I'm always looking forward to my next session, but it does carry into, and it also, the effects, they do carry into your life, just like your breath. Is it like, can you compare it to a muscle? Like, does your breathing get stronger in general? Will your natural unconscious breath become deeper and deeper as you're constantly working on it?
Yes. What happens through life is, imagine like a bottle, and through your life you can get dents in that bottle. Maybe you were in a car accident, or maybe you had a first heartbreak. Those little dents that happen. They happen in your breath. And so a breathwork session is extremely healing when you set the intent and the awareness to say, let's get out those dents. I'm ready to let go of the trauma. I'm ready to let go of my unworthiness, or I'm ready to let go of that memory that is that haunts me, and reminds me of a really bad time in my life or whatnot. And so the breath is a perfect avenue to your subconscious. It is a medium conscious and subconscious. You can be conscious of your breath, and you can also not be conscious of it, and you can also use it to access all of that. So any intention that you make for yourself, your breath is going to respect that. It's your natural intelligence. It's your natural life force. So if that's your intent as you prepare the body to let go and breathe in that way, then you're going to achieve those feelings. You're going to achieve the physicality of letting out those dents so that it can flow and won't come back. Like, that's healed, that's gone, you let that go. So from that day on, you will notice your breathing. Sometimes there's layers and layers of fear or aspects of ourselves that victimization, helplessness, that bring us back into that aspect,
repetitive behaviors and habits.
So
that's what we're referring to when we're talking about healing, right? Essentially, that's a term. I just want to touch on it because that's a term that might get taken out. Like, people might not know exactly what that means, but really, not only are there a lot of physical benefits, but healing in terms of releasing just a lot of the things that restrict us emotionally, right?
Yeah.
You touched on it earlier, how much of an impact proper breathing can have on not only our health, but the way we communicate, the way we interact with people in our lives. So what are some other ways that breath work can benefit various aspects of our lives, not only physically, but just some other ways.
Right. So when you activate your chi during a breathwork session, we call it activation because now you've reached a point where your internal intelligence will take over and heal whatever it is that it feels can have more potential, more space, more freedom. So we'll let go anything that has layered itself in there, restricted, and been stuck where it doesn't need to be, which is what is essentially happening to you physically, but it's also the imprint with how you feel energetically. And so it can tap into the energetic systems that you have. You will feel the actual energy in and all around you. And many people look at energy as that prana, that life source, that spirituality aspect of ourselves. And so it can bring that enlightened, free, light feeling that says, I'm worthy, I'm good enough, I'm capable, and I'm free to be as I am. And that imprint, when you come in, if you're stressed and anxious, and then now you just shifted into I'm free, I'm light, and
I'm a healthy organism.
I'm alive, and I can function, and yay, I have space. Then it's going to translate into feeling better overall, and the more you access that, the more you can relate to reaching that in your healing process with breath work, then the more you experience that in your life and recognize like the potential of your vitality. You're not being shut down and scared and limited as frequently. So you're sort of taking that and making that smaller and making the light and the source and the capability to be yourself, which involves communication and which involves clarity and what you want to manifest. It involves
so many things,
dependence and taking care of yourself and bonding, connecting with people. It helps support all of those things that is a natural and important part of who we are as humans, which is, we have the life. If the life feels good, the life is functioning, then the life has all those aspects. It has it
has access to all the amazing things that we wish. It could be the starting point for some huge changes in our lives, because being in the other side of the coin is always being scared and fearful, which would result in a much different behavior, life experience. But feeling healthy and feeling happy and feeling better could lead to a whole nother wealth of experiences that many of us might not have access to, and it might start with the breath, which is just crazy to think about. It's such a simple thing. Yeah, it's a great place to start, but just the implications of but coming down to just a practical point of view is this: if you're really just nourishing your organism, you're using what we have access to be healthy, be a healthy person.
Yeah.
And then being a healthy person allows you to kind of maneuver better through this crazy experience of chaos and that we call life, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So. Yeah.
Breath is first place to look at. It is. They say it's the first thing in life when we breathe in, and when we pass, when we leave with an exhale. Yeah. And everything in between are thousands and thousands of breaths.
Yeah, and thousands of possibilities, and it's up to us. It starts with awareness, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. So yeah, thanks so much for that experience. I look forward to my next session and helping us illuminate the aspect of the breath. It's such a vast thing, but it's so important. It's something that we overlook. And so just, is there anything what can you leave us with just to right now, how can we improve the way that we breathe and that we perceive breathing?
Listen to it every day. In moments where you feel panicky or you feel like, instead of thinking about other things when you're driving the car or just you're about to walk into a new scenario or a new situation, just listen, tune into it.
Great.
it'll make a big difference.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Katie. So that's Katie McIntyre from mindbodymontreal.com. You can find her on Facebook as well. She's always posting her events, her upcoming breathwork sessions here in Montreal. And I think you're kind of move around a little bit now, right?
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, you can see all the dates and locations on my website.
Awesome. All right. So thanks again.
Thank you.